Begin with this. President Donald Trump is wheels up to the Netherlands right now, and that is where he will take part in a NATO summit. The visit comes just hours after a key ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran seemed to stall. So let's break down what happened. This morning, Israeli first responders said an Iranian missile hit the southern city of Beersheba, killing 4 people and wounding about 20 others. After that, Israel accused Iran of firing more missiles and violating a ceasefire deal. In response, Israel says they retaliated by destroying a radar array near Tehran. Iran denies breaking the agreement. President Trump quick to save the deal, I should say. He held a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House says he stood firm about what needs to happen to, quote, sustain the ceasefire. Now, after that conversation, Netanyahu says they refrained from further attacks. Before that, though, the president, he did not hold back his frustrations. Listen to what he said.
I think they both violated it. I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't rein people back. I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning at all, and I'm going to see if I can stop it. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand?
And on that note, we've got team coverage. Standing by for us is CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. But first, let's go live to the ground in Iraq, where we find CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams. Holly, good to see you once again today. Given the back and forth we've seen today, is this ceasefire, is it guaranteed to actually hold?
It is certainly not guaranteed to hold. It hasn't broken down, Mugo, but it looks pretty precarious, doesn't it? You have Israel alleging ceasefire violations by Iran and then retaliating, Iran denying those ceasefire violations. Some very harsh words for both sides there from President Trump. It is clearly fragile, but there's also enormous pressure from the US to try to make it stick.
And Holly, we know there have been a lot of headlines coming from the region just over the weekend alone. Can you walk us through the biggest developments and how we got to this point?
Yeah, it's been a pretty confusing time here in the Middle East, I think, Mugo. The US entered the conflict over the weekend by bombing 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Iran clearly felt compelled to respond, perhaps because to do otherwise would look weak in this region. But the fact is that Iran is weakened by 11 days of war with Israel. And in the end, its response was really quite minimal. President Trump said that Iran fired 14 missiles at the Al Udeid air base in Qatar. That is the biggest US military base here in the Middle East with several thousand US troops. But Trump said that 13 of those missiles were intercepted and 1 was allowed to land harmlessly. He also said that Iran had given advance warning. Now that looks very much like a kind of face-saving retaliation from the Iranians, and then shortly after they agreed to a ceasefire.
Holly, I think the next question, though, is where do both sides go from here now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, diplomatic wheels are clearly turning, but what are the possibilities here? Firstly, I guess the ceasefire could break down and then we'll go back to war between Iran and Israel. If the ceasefire holds, what are the possibilities? Firstly, I guess Iran could capitulate, could either give up its nuclear program or curtail it. That's clearly what President Trump is hoping for. On the other hand, the Iranians could look at the last, 11 or 12 days and think this just proves that we need to be able to better defend ourselves, and they could be more motivated to pursue nuclear weapons. And of course, Mugo, they could do both. They could publicly pursue diplomacy while secretly trying to rebuild their nuclear program, which they have always maintained is purely for civilian purposes.
All right, I suppose time will tell what will really happen next. Holly Williams, thank you so much for your insight and for your reporting live for us from Iraq today. Thank you. Let's go live now to Washington and CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, how is the president ensuring that both sides stick to this agreement? Is he prepared to unleash consequences if they actually don't stick to things?
Well, Mugo, we're not at that point yet where this White House is saying what the consequences will be, but the president is certainly waging this out in the public sphere, telling people that he is upset with both Iran and Israel. That is what he said this morning on his way out to Marine One, which we saw that video where he said they both don't know what they're doing. And he went on to say he's unhappy with Israel. A White House official also told us that he had a very exceptionally firm and direct conversation with the prime minister this morning before getting on Marine One. We also know that the president called Prime Minister Netanyahu again on his way to NATO. So 2 conversations with him this morning to make sure this fragile ceasefire is staying in place. The president, still on his way to NATO, actually just wrote on Truth Social that both Israel and Iran wanted to stop the war equally. It was my great honor, he writes, to destroy all nuclear facilities and capability and then stop the war. This is what the president just wrote on Truth Social. So clearly trying to keep together this very fragile agreement right now, and saying that the strikes that were launched over the weekend were limited in scope. We've all accomplished what we've needed to. Iran has retaliated. Let's put everything down and stop this war. And clearly trying to keep Prime Minister Netanyahu also in line with this thinking as well.
Yeah, and Olivia, as you mentioned there, we know the president is right now on his way to attend a NATO summit, and he should be there in the next hour. Will the conflict between Israel and Iran overshadow his goal for this visit? Because I'm sure he wanted to walk in there with a show of strength.
It certainly wanted to walk in with a show of strength, and it's certainly a deliverable to say, look at this conflict that has been waging, longer than 12 days, been going on for decades, and he says he'd be able to solve it. Certainly you'd want to walk into a situation with world leaders and be able to say you've had a deliverable like that. As far as overshadowing the NATO summit, it might not overshadow, but it's certainly something else that they're going to have to consider when talking about achieving peace in this region. The main focus of this summit, of course, is going to be Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine and how to get that to an end. And this is certainly just another consideration. And of course, there are countries that will be there, thinking about France, the UK, Germany, who are part of this group that have been asking Iran to get back to the table and have these diplomatic conversations with President Trump about denuclearization or achieving peace in the region. So I expect it'll be something that is talked about amidst all the broader things like the war in Ukraine, increasing defense spending, trade even, that will certainly be a part of this very big conference in the Netherlands.
And Olivia, I believe Trump spoke with Putin, and Putin offering to help him out with the conflicts going on between Israel and Iran right now. Do we know anything else that was said during that conversation?
Well, the president says of that conversation specifically that, yes, President Vladimir Putin of Russia offered to help with Iran. And President Trump says that he said back to him that I need you to end your own conflict before you start trying to meddle in what's going on in Iran and Israel. And this president is someone who said he could end that war in Ukraine on day one. We know they have tried to get to the table. They have tried to get both parties to talk to each other directly rather than having the U.S. be an intermediary. There was a ceasefire there that fell apart very quickly. So it's been a peace that's been very difficult for them to achieve, and certainly something that will be top of mind for the president when he goes into this NATO summit, of how can they actually get to a point where there will be lasting peace between those two countries. Also of note, the president is expected to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky on the sidelines of this NATO summit. And we know that this president has said access for Ukraine into NATO is a non-starter. It is not something that this administration agrees with or thinks should be something on the table as they're pursuing this peace. And the overarching part of that is, if you're part of NATO, you're part of Article 5, which means it's the belief that if one country gets attacked, they all get attacked. And this president has said he wants to be a peace president. He wants to be known for that. And that would certainly complicate that aspect of it. Mugo?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that conversation when the two leaders meet. Olivia Renati live for us at the White House today. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.